I'm the author of these, and I'm a chocolate educator. I'm also a preschool teacher. So what I want to tell you guys about, for me, the way I like to learn is I like to have some context about what I'm learning about to build upon. So I just moved back to the United States from 3.5 years in England. When I'd go to all these historic sites, you'd be like, yeah, Charles I, Henry VII. I was like, see, none of this means anything to me because I don't have a foundation. I don't know the timeline. I can't learn. So what we're going to do today is just sort of go through, and I might have to sit to do it. We'll see if I can do it without. So we're going to go through a brief history of, okay, so yeah, here's my books. So we get a little bit silly, but a lot of people, when I ask them if they like dark chocolate, they don't really like it. And look, I didn't like dark chocolate when I first started eating it. I didn't. The older I get, the less sugar I want. And when we first moved to San Francisco, this whole bean to bar craft chocolate movement had just started getting started. We're going to talk a little bit about the way chocolate is made today and then how it was used in the past. But this whole craft chocolate movement started in San Francisco in the late 90s. It was a doctor and a winemaker, and it was called Scharfenberger. And you used to have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to buy all this chocolate equipment. But what people started realizing is, what I'm going to show you later, is they have these little grinders, these for rice and lentils, and you could grind it up and start making it at home. So we are going to have some dark chocolate. But here's the thing. You can spit anything out. This is all about just experimenting and trying, and I hated dark chocolate for the longest time. We're going to have some milk as well. But what you're going to see is milk didn't come into the picture for a long time. It took years. So where does chocolate come from? It's funny about Latin America, and I've lived in Argentina. They don't do chocolate because they're too far away from the equator. But people, it's so valued that they all want to say it came from them. No, it's from us. No, it's from us. But the reality that we know is that they found evidence of these in these ancient vessels, which are actually really complicated because you twist them. These vessels were really, and they were buried in this place called Santa Ana la Florida in Ecuador. And so this is 5,300 years ago. Of course, I'm sure it can be older, but this is what we have evidence of. Caffeine is in coffee. Theobromine, very similar molecular, but that's what's in chocolate, and they found it in these pots. So you guys are all now going to try 100% chocolate, if you want. Do you want to pass that out with your glove? Okay. So the oldest origins, and it was a drink. Chocolate has been a drink for thousands and thousands of years. So where does it start? Chocolate starts in these tiny little flowers. Again, it's 20 degrees north or south of the equator. And it has to be pollinated by little tiny midge flies. You want to pollinate it by midge flies. Bees are way too big to climb up those tiny little flowers. Do you see how it grows on the trunk of the trees? And just like apples, just like grapes, just like anything, you've got a wide variety of cacao, okay? It's all going to taste differently. Who's been tasting different fall apples? The Honeycrisp, the whatever, right? They all taste differently. Here's your little midge fly, and they love to live in this forest litter on the ground. So you want to leave these old pods. Once they cut them open to harvest, and I'm going to show you, you want to leave this on the ground because these little midge flies live in this rotting, wet forest litter. What's this one going to do? This might be a video, and so it might be. Let me see. Oh, yeah, it was a video. It's that one, yeah. If the Wi-Fi doesn't want to work, I will. Let me see. I think I'm on the Wi-Fi. So look, this is a video. The video's not going to work. Okay. Well, you can see these cacao pods. They grow on the trunks of the trees. With craft chocolate makers, they're going to cut them when they're ripe. And that means they're going to have to go back every day and check every fruit. When you're doing industrial chocolate, they're just going to chop those off. This is harvest time. We're going to put it in. And what's going on? The Wi-Fi's not on? Okay, let's do that. I can keep talking while thanks for helping me. So, who has had like a hard peach or plum? It doesn't have as much flavor. So you want to harvest cacao when it's ripe, it's juicy, it's ready, you got all those sugars. After harvest, you're going to ferment it. So basically think about that cabbage, the shape of the cabbage, and then what it is when it's either kimchi or sauerkraut, or what your beer does with fermentation, or your pickles, and it changes the taste. Fermentation gives cacao flavor, but not all fermentation is the same. So what you're having around the world, and you're going to try some of this chocolate later, is they have fermentation centers where farmers are paid. This is not always the case, but this is the goal in craft chocolate. Farmers are paid the same amount of money that they would be paid with, is it working? Yeah. They'd be paid the same amount that they'd be paid for fermented cacao, but with their wet beans, bringing it in so they can all do it consistently in one place. So you see, here's the beans, these big pile of pods. Sorry, not beans, but pods. These are cacao pods. They come in a variety of flavors, colors. All of these are ripe. All those, like this, it might be the most beautiful fruit, right? So all of those are ripe. And in some countries like Ghana, it's absolutely fantastic. People come out, they have these big piles, they bring the music, the whole community comes out, they harvest them together, and they make it a big event.
So are they what you know,
slimy?
Well, even the outside?
No, it feels like a butternut squash or like an acorn squash. Acorn squash is the most accurate.
It's got some you can.
And I can send them over to get one too, or you guys can all come to the children's area after and I'll cut them open for you to try.
I've seen dried ones, but I didn't know when they're.
No, they're fleshy. It feels, the most thing I can think of is like cutting open a pumpkin.
Okay.
Okay, now why don't you want to move? Yeah, will you move that? I have to have tech support. So we've seen this one. Yeah, but it just doesn't want to go down. Okay, so you see them fermenting. Look, these ones start like this, turn like that. These are in Hawaii. And this fruit tasted like Skittles. So here's some fermentation boxes. Not every country does fermentation boxes. This is in the Dominican Republic. Other people put it out on banana leaves and cover it with banana leaves. It depends on where you are and how much sugar your fruit has, the fermentation process. But this will be in this box for a few days. You know, they cover it with bags. It'll go to this box for a few days, and then it'll go to that one for about a day. That fruit's going to disappear. Just like you and I like sugar, the bacteria and the yeast are going to eat all that sugar. It's going to be gone. Once it's gone, it's going to be dried. I don't know why I don't have a drying slide, but once it's dry, you get like a lot of fun things in your beans too when they ship. But you get them in these sacks and you send them out to the world. Okay. Once they get there, you roast it. He is using a small, this is Martin O'Dare in England. He really brought, has worked a lot in Solomon Islands and sort of Polynesia with beans. So he's using his pastry oven. It just doesn't want to move after videos. So he's doing a small pastry oven, but a lot of people use big coffee roasters, okay? So roasting, you can enhance that flavor of the bean right there, or you can destroy it. So these farmers have worked hard to get a good soil, to get a good fruit, to get the right time of harvest, to get the good fermentation, to get the good drying. Do you want the mouse? It'll be easier with the mouse. But if you over roast it, you're going to destroy it. Think about toast right here. So where do you like your toast? Here, I don't taste the bread. Here, it sort of enhances the bread for me. Here, it destroys it. So you don't want to over roast this stuff, okay? You want to go low and slow, and you want to roast it. If you come see me over there, I'll give you a few beans you can take home to roast to try it out. Some people, if they have more money, you can use an old coffee roaster. Okay, this is taking off the outer husk of the bean. You have this outer husk, so after you roast it, you have this outer husk that's going to be removed. So they're putting the beans in there, and it's taking the outer husk and putting the nibs. Can you guys pass out nibs to everybody to try? They're right here. Everybody can try these nibs. So we forgot to give them the 100% chocolate. No. Oh, you did? You guys all had it? Yeah, okay. So you see, so again, that's what they were doing. They would add some honey, they would add some vanilla, they would add some chilies in that, but it's pretty strong, right? And waxy. Okay, so you guys tried it.
Oh, yeah.
This guy. Okay. So you have the nib. So you have the bean. You take off the shell, you get the husk, then you have the nib. They're going to grind down those nibs in these machines. They used to use this. They used to grind down the chocolate on this old stone. We'll see more photos of this. You guys can all come and try it. They'd grind down on these stones, but now we've got these electric machines that blend and blend for a few days. It becomes liquid. Okay. So this is, now we're going to temper it. This is sort of a hypnotic tempering machine. Look at this thing. The guy we just saw, Martin O'Dare, he invented this. It's sort of, you're going to temper this. They're hand tempering it. People also temper it with machines. Man, why am I having a hard time with this? All right. I just don't know why it wants to be so funny and finicky. Okay, here we go. Okay, if you don't temper chocolate well, it looks like you have chocolate leprosy. You've got cocoa butter, and if you don't get the cocoa butter, we can talk about this later, but the class is about something else. If you don't get the cocoa butter tempered well, then you're going to get, the cocoa butter is going to come out. It's a crystal food. So do you see the crystals? Think about frost on a window. You have a nucleation site, it starts to spread. Butter is a crystal food. You bring butter to room temperature, it melts. Chocolate is a crystal food, but it's the only crystal food you can bring to room temperature and it stays solid. Ice, it melts. Oh, sugar stays. Sugar stays. So that's not actually totally accurate. But you see, it gets this ugliness. This is what you want. You want to temper it well. Okay, so what happens when we start getting to Europe, and we're gonna get there, okay? But I sort of had these out of order, but it's okay. We're gonna start adding sugar. So when you go around and talk to all the chocolate makers, 85% sugar, 85% chocolate, 15% sugar. So I'm just gonna go through these quickly to show you. There's an 80% bar. You got 20% sugar, 80% cacao. Okay, 30% sugar, 70. This is what a lot of chocolate makers feel is the sweet spot. Just enough sugar to enhance the flavor of those beans without overpowering it. I taste what the chocolate tastes like. I don't taste the sugar, but it just enhances it. So I get a good flavor. I'm not getting that bitter. Because in some ways, with how dark that was, you don't really taste the chocolate. So getting to this level, you get it to taste that. 55%, this is like a dark milk bar. You got milk and sugar. This is a Cadbury bar. It's 20% milk. 20%, yeah, so you'll see that's the Cadbury bar. In Europe, you have to have about 20% to chocolate to call it a chocolate bar. This is a Hershey bar. So that's a Hershey bar. So this is what happens when we bring it over to Europe. Okay, so where does it start? I told you it started all the way down in Ecuador. You've had this 100% bar. Starts in Ecuador. The thing about this, I love the history and I love everything that was going on with this. But so they had these really extensive trade routes. So they didn't have beasts of burden. So these guys are walking up and down these trails with these sacks. And they have all sorts of things in these sacks. But one of those things is cocoa beans. So they come across, you guys are going to try this bar right now. This is the Pura bar. This is made with, I'm giving you guys a break. We're having some oat milk in this one. This would not have been realistic back in the past, obviously, but this is going to have the nibs and a 50% with some oat milk. This is made out of England. And this one is Pura beans. What I want to show you is just like a fine wine, when you have chocolate, we don't add milk and sugar to wine. We taste that different flavors. If you have the 70% bar, you're going to taste the flavors of that. Not all chocolate tastes the same. So you're going to get maybe notes of cherry, notes of nuts, notes of raspberry, okay? You're going to get a different flavor. So you want to let that melt on your mouth, take a lot of deep breaths, and sort of see those flavors. And a good chocolate should bring you on a long journey and should leave you a good taste in your mouth. Should bring you on sort of a flavor journey. You might get cherry at the beginning, and then you get a little bit of raisin, and then you get a little bit of date. So you want a good journey. Okay, so we just keep traveling up. You know, look at all these countries, and you've got these trade routes, and I mean, the societies were just incredible. So you're coming on up, and then all of a sudden, we've got Columbus, who shows up off the coast of Honduras in 1502. 1502, let's think. Oh, I should open this again for you guys. I'm going to close it again and I'm going to open it because I want you to smell something. It's going to. So the first encounter with cacao from Europeans that we have, this is Columbus. He had his son with him. And the Mayan traders come off their canoes and they have something that looks like almonds that they drop in the bottom of their canoes on accident. And Columbus's son Ferdinand said, for their provisions, they had many of these almonds, which in New Spain are used for money. They seemed to hold these almonds at a great price, for when they were brought on board the ship together with their goods, I observed that when any of these almonds fell, they all stopped to pick it up as if an eye had fallen out. Now, why would that happen? Because, oh, do you guys have that pink Honduran bar? Yeah, let's break that one up for everybody to try. I think it's, no, that's Honduras. Let's try Honduras. So, so you see these.
Oh, yeah.
What do you smell? Do you smell vinegar? Let me close them again. If I close it and open it up, you're going to smell the vinegar. Because when you ferment it, you add acetic acid. It gets, will you guys bring those over to them to smell? So you bring them, so you get this acetic acid that you want to burn off in the making, and there's a whole art to that too. Okay, so you guys are going to try a Honduras chocolate bar. This does have milk. It's a 60% bar from Honduras. This is Cam and Lara. They started in coffee. She was a photographer. He's an engineer. You're going to find that a lot of people in this business are engineers. You're also going to find that a lot of families do it together in craft chocolate. You're doing it as a family. Thanks, Bubba. And if you guys want to take some of these beans, I'll let you. So yeah, so these guys make this in Glasgow, Scotland. And you're going to try their bar. These guys have won a lot of awards for their Philippine bar, which I don't have anymore, but okay. So then it moves on up to Belize, which you all get to try too. We keep moving on up to Belize. And eventually what's going to happen is, oh, so sorry, I didn't finish with you guys. So with Columbus, it didn't end up going back to Europe. It didn't go back. That wasn't the time that it sort of made its way to Europe. So, and I'm sorry I'm making you guys work hard. You guys are going to try this bar from, it's called Maya Mountain. And this is in Belize. Now, what's happening is, it is so hard to ferment. It is so hard to dry well. You are drying these wet cacao beans in humid, hot weather. What happens in humid, hot weather? Mold. On our coffee, on our cacao. So you are having these cooperatives pop up. There's one in Tanzania. There's this one in Belize. And so they're paying farmers a higher wage. They're fermenting it and drying it. So you're getting a consistent fermentation, a consistent drying, keeping the quality high. I've actually got a gentleman who's reached out to me on LinkedIn. Hold on, I want to see what you guys think about this. We're going to slow down on this one. How did you guys like the Honduras? You like the Honduras? We'll tell Laura and Cam. They were the first people that bought my book. And they knew how to roast because they had worked so many years in chocolate. Okay, so everybody smell it, and I want to see what you guys think about this particular bar. This one, you're going to taste the chocolate, not the milk. If you,
Kids, by the way.
these are my kids. Axel is my kid for the day, and then my two daughters are with me, yeah. They came out with me from New York. So yeah, let me know what you think about that. And if you want another piece, just let us know. Let it slowly melt and take a lot of deep breaths. What do you think? You like it? What are you tasting? Sort of fruity, cherry? What do you think you're getting? So you're saying different, and I'm thinking it doesn't sound like you like it.
No, when I don't like it, I say it's interesting.
Yeah. Do you guys feel a little? Do you guys feel it a little bit in your jaw right there? Because sometimes you get acidity. Do you feel a little bit of acidity right here? You're still having a little bit of that milk from the last bar. So if you want to try it again, we can give you another piece. you're still having a little bit of that milk that's going to affect the taste you have. But, okay, so I want to tell you a couple things. This is a little bit of a deviation, forgive me. When it's so fruity, right? It's very fruity, very sort of acidic. Some chocolates are very floral. Some chocolates are very earthy. I'm not a fan of the earthy. Some people love it. I do not like the woodsy, sort of earthy, sort of olive, I don't like those as much, but some people love them. And Ember's chocolate in there, she has a smoky chocolate that she has, which usually smoke is seen as a negative, but she's done it really well. And so the smoke is a nice addition. So yeah, so this is a bar that I've never actually really met anybody who doesn't like it, but it's okay if you don't. Do you get these blackberry raisin honey? I've never gotten honey. Never had honey. Yeah. So, okay, so we move up from Belize, and the Spanish arrive in Mexico off the coast. Hernan Cortez was sort of an eager upstart. He had been over in Hispaniola, Dominican Republic and Haiti area, with a commander, a boss, whatever, and he had asked him if he could sort of go off to explore. So this is just my stupid British reference. Nobody expects the Spanish Inquisition from, what is that show again? Monty Python. But there's a video, you can look it up. But anyway, so they arrive off the coast of Mexico in Veracruz. So Montezuma is here in imagine you're arriving in Mexico. Mexico's one of the coolest places. This is actually Tulum. This is much farther down, but I just wanted to sort of give you a photo. Imagine you're sort of coming. This was an old trade route in Mexico where goods would come through. Like I told you, all those trades, this was like a trade outpost down in Tulum. So the Aztecs were incredible. They built a city floating on water. And so this is Tenochtitlan. This is, you can sort of see the images here. So Montezuma hears that these huge things are showing up. They're not really sure what they are. These big boats are showing up. And they start getting a little bit nervous. So they send some of his delegation to sort of try to find out what's happening. And they were commenting about the horses. They were commenting about, and these Spanish, they arrived filthy. They were filthy. Some of them had never bathed in all their life. They'd been on the boat all this time. And you also have paid soldiers that have joined up, and they're coming. So Montezuma keeps sending delegations to try to get them to go away. Here's this. I have my magicians to try to scare you. Here's some silver. But the silver and the gold just made them want it more. So they come marching across. And there is a town called Tlaxcala in Mexico. And a lot of people hated the Aztecs because they were fighting all the time. And so sometimes when these Spanish come in, they start fighting with all the Tlaxcalans. And still in Mexico, I'll have friends from Mexico that say, oh, they're dumb people. They're dumb people. And it's that resentment for them helping overthrow. But a lot of people hate the Aztecs. They're warring, they're powerful, they resent them. So the Tlaxcalans had been fighting with these guys for years, and the Aztecs didn't take the Tlaxcalans seriously. They would send their young men to fight them just to practice. So the Tlaxcalans are fighting with the Spanish, and then all of a sudden one of the leaders was like, wait, why do we fight them? Let's go and help them take over the Spaniards, take over the Aztecs. So people march in. Montezuma was a little worried. Now, I've been a little bit offended by history because people act like the Aztecs are idiots. And they said that he came in as the winged feather serpent. The Aztecs are not idiots. They built a floating city. These people had filtered water. These people were in a highly advanced society. And when they came in, Montezuma did say, welcome to your house. Like, mi casa is su casa. My house is your house. That's not because he thought, oh, this is a god. These guys were filthy. Aztecs were not stupid. These guys were filthy. They were very obviously humans. So they come in and they, any delegation that would come, they would be friendly and welcome them. And so they welcomed them. And one of the first things they did was give them a drink of a dark, bitter water that the Spaniards said it was only fit for the pigs. But they could tell that they loved it. There's rumors that Montezuma had 50 cups a day. And what they loved is, who likes a cappuccino with foam? They would pour it. Oh, I got to keep moving on my slides. I just keep talking. Okay, so this is just me being an idiot because I always am. But if you see this, you see the foam. And this is obviously a liter. So these are Maya glyphs. This is the Mayan language, the written language. So you see the Maya glyphs right here. So these might be ear flowers. They would add lots of ingredients that were expensive. These are tamales. So tamales have been, who's had tamales? They're common in the US. When I lived in England, I would usually give my neighbors their first tamale ever. But tamales have been with chocolate for years. And now still in Mexico on Christmas Eve, Noche Buena, they have tamales with chocolate. So that's really common. So we do these parties in England all the time. Actually, tamales are a perfect food because if you guys have been eating chocolate all day, you have a little bit of a pit in your stomach because of all those tannins from the chocolate. A tamale is a nice balance to that. You don't want more sugar with sugar. And obviously they weren't having sugar, but so tamales are a good food. So you see the foam. So they would pour it up and down. Doesn't he look unhappy though? He looks so mad. And he looks like he's like, I'm not sharing this with you. And this guy's like, what if I give you these or this giant hamburger? I actually don't know what that is. Would you share? But it's lovely because we have all these old pictures to show. A lot of the women did the work. So the Mayan women would paint their faces red. I've heard that it was if they were married. I can't say that for sure. But they would cook in these you'd have these ancient pots. And actually, I just went to an event in New York City where a Harvard professor and her husband, who teaches at Boston College, had a bunch of these ancient vessels from Mesoamerica that had the cacao in them. And they've been in the US and they're repatriating them back to Costa Rica, to Honduras, to Mexico. So they're beautiful vessels. They're painted. They show people drinking the cacao. They show even like a psychedelic enema. With a cocoa enema. They just show all the different things that were happening. But the women would prepare it mainly on these metates. So it says, well, it looks like you have it under control. Just sip my cacao and watch. So here's a man sitting and watching. The women are preparing it. Okay, so this is the Maya glyph that represents chocolate. Cacawa. The dots make you repeat it twice. Cacawa. Sort of looks like a fish, these fins. You see women making it on that metate. She's also got corn. Here's those ancient vessels I was telling you about. And this is the priestess pouring the water to get the foam. To get that foam was highly prized. Now, I've talked to a Mayan in Mexico a few months ago, and he said, yeah, because we want to feed our body, but we want to feed the spirit. And I can't say this is how everybody feels. This is one place. There's context for every country is different. But he said, the foam feeds our spirit. And so that was his view on it. So when the Spaniards they started having a molinillo, and they would roll it like this to get that froth. And I wish I had some liquid to show you, but they would do this and get that froth. I had other friends from Mexico that said, of course we do that. That's how you cool it down. So everybody's going to have their different context, okay? But one thing we know is that it did have all that foam. Okay, so when I was growing up in Utah, I was like, you'd go to a Mexican restaurant and they had that mole, and mole has chocolate. And I would say, why would they have chocolate in their food? Because for me, chocolate was sweet. Chocolate was candy. That is not how it has been for thousands of years in Mesoamerica. This was a staple. Women would prepare these chilies, their cacao, their corn for years on these. They would prepare it all in the same thing. Okay? All right. So this is an Aztec codex. You don't see the Maya glyphs, so that will tell you. What happened is when the Spanish arrived, there was this very overzealous Spanish priest. And even though it was illegal what he did, he burned a lot of the Mayan records. Now, what the Spanish had decided is that the Mayans were simple children. And so they were simple children that we didn't need to take seriously. So it was okay if we had their records. But for whatever reason, the Spanish priest got it in his bonnet that he didn't want him around. He didn't want this stuff. So he burned it up. And so we lost a lot of the Mayan records. So what happened when the Spanish arrived is they started working with the Aztecs or the Mayans and making more codices. I think there's only 10 codices that survive from this period of time. Anyway, so these are some of these images coming from that period of time. Again, I'm showing you it was currency. Where do I have, did I just go back up? It was currency. Okay, so one cocoa bean would buy you 5 narrow long chilies. 30 cocoa beans would buy you a small rabbit. 20 cocoa beans would get you a trip from a porter. Here's this young girl, doing it. So the mother's saying, do you have any idea how much cacao costs? You better not spill any of it. And this kid says, cacao is currency. The podcast I listen to while I work say that the future is crypto. But you know what? Still, in Ecuador, there are still places. The woman who you guys are eating these nibs from Jenny says still in parts of Ecuador, they are using cacao as currency. Like deep in Ecuador. And then one of the ambassadors in the United States, when he was down there in the late 1800s, still saw women selling at the, they call them a tenguis, which means these Mexican markets where you swap cocoa beans. You swap, sorry, it's like it's a bartering situation. So he still saw women doing that. Okay. So this is a brand that you can find. I think I have one somewhere, but I'm sorry, I don't know where it is. But Mexican chocolate was often very rough ground. Now, those machines that we saw that were spinning and spinning on the stone grinders, they grind it so much that you don't taste that grit. Just imagine these like ground up for 10 minutes. It's grit, it's a gritty paste. This guy, I think he's in Massachusetts, okay. He went down to Mexico. You can have your opinions on this, it was good or bad. A lot of the Mexicans were like, we're not teaching you how to make this. These stones that we have from our grandfather, his father, we pass these down and these are special and we grind down our chocolate. But he went down and learned enough, so he started doing this rough ground chocolate. So if you get it, the micron size of the chocolate will be big enough that you will taste the granules of the sugar and the granules of the chocolate. They have cinnamon in some of them, and my son loves it. He just chows it down. Some people like to chop them up and put it in water for the drink. Okay, so eventually, after years of the Spanish being in, we know what happened. After they were welcomed, the Spanish, they conquered the Aztecs, that fell. Montezuma died. The Tlaxcalans that we learned about, they were honored. They got higher privileges in the, under the Spanish Empire. They have a bull ring still. They have a bull ring in Tlaxcala because they had such a strong sort of Spanish connection. So this is why am I forgetting the dang name of this painter? Velázquez. So it says, did you know the Spanish, he's painting this royal family, right? Did you know the Spanish brought chocolate to Europe? Of course I did, and we added sugar. Did you know that, smarty pants? Give me some and I'll smile for the portrait. Who cares? I can't eat it. The dogs can't eat it. So anyway, so it comes to Spain. You start seeing how they're doing it. Here is a man grinding it up. You've got these guys making it. It starts with like within the royal houses. So you've got, everybody has a different opinion about it, but it sounds like really sort of how it made its formal introduction was that there was a delegation of priests from Guatemala that showed up in Spain and brought it to Philip. So, because eventually, you start having, Henry VIII dies, we have Elizabeth I is in power, and she's sending Sir Francis Drake, the pirate, all around the globe to steal whatever the Spanish get and all that fun stuff. So they're starting to froth it up, they're making it here, and then it spreads throughout Europe. It started sort of in the royal families. It's very taxing to make chocolate. And you think they had to get those beans, bring them across the ocean, grind them down. And what had happened is when the Spanish showed up, they killed about 90% of the population with the illness. So they brought the pigs, they killed about 90% of the people. And this is another way. Disease and cacao go hand in hand. So they killed 90% of the population. So then they go and start enslaving people and bringing them back to grow it. And then it starts spreading around the world with that, okay? The Dutch now have the largest port of cacao in the world. Like if you go, you'll see it everywhere. And they have a huge chocolate festival there every year. Okay, so it starts getting crazy in England at the chocolate houses, okay? Has anybody ever heard of White's Chocolate House? There's still a club called White's. It's got a 10-year waiting list. And it's a men's social club around St. James Square in London. And it's been around for a long time. So what starts happening is cacao and coffee and tea start making their way to Europe. And so people start using them, socializing. You also have something called penny universities where people go in, it's a penny for a coffee, and they're just talking to each other and talking. So it starts getting crazy in here. These places are gambling. These places are prostitution. One time this guy falls on the porch of White's Chocolate House, right by St. James Palace. He falls right there, and the men, instead of helping him, these men say, let's place a bet. Is he gonna live or is he gonna die? So this worker is like, no, we gotta help him. They say, you cannot get involved with this, because if you do, you're gonna make us lose the bet. You are gonna screw up this thing. So they all just waited to see who was gonna, they'd say, who's gonna get divorced? Who's gonna die? And they would sometimes poison each other in that chocolate. Who's gonna die? You win that bet if you poison them. So it was like, who's gonna get divorced? Who's gonna do that? Also, the Jacobites that were fighting against, the Jacobites were meeting in there too. They had private tunnels underneath these houses that would go to Soho so they could escape if the king would come over, because these were literally right next to the palace of Charles I. So Charles II. Charles II came into power. Have you guys, the English Civil War? So the English Civil War happens. There's a guy named Oliver Cromwell. He's not that fun. He wants everybody to be very serious. They're like, we hate this guy. They end up killing him. They bring Charles II. This guy is a party animal. He's a party animal. He has mistresses. This guy is a wild, crazy guy. I want to show you how much he was spending in cacao. He thought cacao was an aphrodisiac. So he was spending £6 a year on tea, 57 pounds on chocolate in 1666. So he comes back. This is a poem that they would say about these chocolate houses. It will make old women young and fresh, create new emotions of the flesh, make them young for you know what, with one small drop of chocolate. So the British just debased this stuff for a while. But then it starts spreading through, and then how you get milk. Anybody can think of what country would have maybe had added the milk? They're famous for the milk chocolate. Switzerland. Everybody was trying. How do we get milk? Because what happens if you have a liquid chocolate and you add water? It seizes up. You can't add a liquid to this. It'll seize up. So people were trying to figure out, how do we add liquid? How do we add milk? How do we add milk? How do we add milk? And chocolate was sold for years in pharmacies. It was seen as a pharmaceutical. And the way that the little bonbon, the little praline started with Niehaus. He was a pharmacist, and kids didn't want to eat their medicine. So they would put it in a little bit of chocolate. And then his son said, why don't we start putting sweet stuff in that? So you got the praline out of Belgium. To Marie Antoinette, she didn't like her medicine, so she would get in a little bit of chocolate, and there's still a company that would provide her with that chocolate that still makes it in France now. So it started as a pharmaceutical. Why do we pay £6? Sorry, I used to live in England. Why do we pay $6 for a chocolate bar, or 10 pounds? $10. What are some thoughts you have after the lesson? Chocolate was never meant to be a cheap food. It was never meant, it was a luxury, and it takes a lot of work and a lot of effort. Craft chocolate is better for the environment. Chocolate should be grown under the understory. It takes like 3 bathtubs full of water to make a couple of bars, okay? Chocolate is the cacao pod is so prone to disease. There were some people that were so angry at the landowners in Brazil, they introduced a fungus to the cacao in Brazil, destroyed the crops, and for years with bioterrorism. It is so sensitive to disease. And so farmers have to be so careful with that. And then they might lose an entire season of it. The family from Honduras that's here, they used to get 2 harvests of cacao a year. It's usually every 6 months. They had 6 months without rain. They only got 1 year of harvest. They only got 1 harvest this year of cacao. Craft chocolate is better for you. I showed you how much less sugar it has. And, a lot of functional medicine doctors will tell you, if you're going to have dessert, just have a couple squares of dark chocolate, savor it, be done. Right? So you get this craft chocolate bar, you're not going to go and eat it like that fast. You're going to enjoy a couple of squares. You're going to savor it like a fine wine. You're going to let that flavor melt. You're going to get that flavor journey. You're going to savor it, and then usually you're satisfied. If it's a really good bar, you might keep eating it. But usually if you'll let it sit for a minute, you'll get that little sweet thing satisfied. So this is an example of one craft chocolate maker. They pay the farmers $3.88 a kilo. The average price they would get is $1.80. So the chocolate you're buying right now, they're paying the farmers a lot more. Look, farmers should be the most well-paid people in our world, right? They make our food. They take care of our soil. 80% of our food is grown in the soil. I could be wrong on that number, but it's that high. Our soil is so important. These are the caregivers of our soil. These are the caregivers of our microbes. These are the people that grow our food. The fact is, they always try to push, industrial chocolate always tries to push farther and farther down on the farmers. And the farmers are the ones we should be celebrating and not punishing. So that's one of the parts about craft chocolate is they're trying to get the farmers to be paid more, which it shouldn't take a movement to do that. We should just be doing that, but that's where we are. So I've already showed you Hershey's. Okay, I just want to show you, again, you wouldn't add milk to your wine. What would it taste like if you added milk? And look, it's fine to add milk chocolate. All I'm telling you is that when you have these 70% bars, what you're getting is more of the true flavor of the chocolate. I like adding milk to my coffee. I like adding milk. I'm just telling you there's different experiences, okay? Sometimes when we eat chocolate, we're tasting milk and sugar. The bars you're having, the 70%, the 80%, you're tasting the milk. So anyway, so that's it. If you guys have any questions for me, I'm happy to answer any questions. Yeah? Yeah? Any other chocolates you guys want to try? Anybody want to try to ground the chocolate on the metate? Does he want to come try? Come on. Anybody want to take a few beans home or? Okay. And again, when they were grinding this in Mexico and in Honduras and everywhere, you had the humidity and the heat that would help these melt, and it was easier to get melt. Some people, when they try to do this, they'll do a hair dryer. No, sorry. I thought we were, but we ended up breaking it because. Does anybody want me to crack open any other bars? Is everybody like sort of over chocolate now? Not close? You didn't get to try, yeah. So, okay, yeah, that one had milk and, but it had a high percentage of cacao and then just a little bit of milk. Laura and Cam are really good. Yeah, and they get a lot of attention in the UK for their chocolate. They have really, really cute shop up in Glasgow, and they're doing really well. They've only been doing it for probably 6 years. Started making it in their garage, just like a lot of people do. And that's how the craft chocolate movement started, in a garage. Like during the whole tech boom, everything was in the garage, and so was the chocolate in Silicon Valley. Yeah, and they would do it for hours and hours. So they would do it on their knees. So there's a Mayan man in Mexico that taught me. He goes, look, he's like, the Mayan culture and the Spanish culture melded. He said, I'm a Mayan man, but my name is Jesus. And he said, so what we would do with the Spanish is we'd say, look, chocolate is sacred because on our knees, we grind it. With our hands, like a prayer, we do this. So this is our prayer. And we look to God when we drink it. Yeah. So anyway, I can talk all day. People have places to be. But I'm happy to crack open a bar if anybody wants to try anything. I do have a Ghana bar. Anybody want to try from Ghana? You want to try from Ghana? So I work with preschoolers on Saturdays, and so my original degree was photography, and it brought me to New York. And then when we moved to Chicago after I got married, I was like looking for things to do, and I ended up hearing about this lecture by a Yale professor named Michael Coe, who was an Olmec expert, and his wife, while she was down there with him, started to write a history of chocolate. And so I saw him speak, and I didn't really care about chocolate, and that sort of got me sucked in. So the history is what I really love. So I spent several years sort of studying it, and then I decided I'd write some children's books on the topic, because I taught preschool as well. But anyway, so I brought this bar to my boss, and she's like, okay, now I cannot eat any other chocolate. She said every night, because she teaches fifth graders during the week, she's like, go home, I have a little glass of wine, and now I do my glass of wine, I do my little Ghana chocolate. My husband said I've never been happier. So she sits and does her little Ghana chocolate. Now, let's think about wine. Who's a wine drinker here? Do you drink a little bit of wine? So, have you guys heard the term terroir? Terroir. You want to explain it?
The flavor comes from the earth where the grapes grow, or maybe where the cacao grows.
Yes. So no country has a terroir. Like some people are like, oh, I love Ecuador. Ecuador doesn't have a taste. It's going to depend. Just like you've got champagne grapes, you've got these grapes all over France, right? But there is one exception. A lot of people feel like Ghana beans taste like what you think chocolate should taste like. That's the one exception. That a lot of people really do feel like Ghana has that true flavor. And of course, it'll depend on a lot of things, but that's some of the reputation. Now, this chocolate is made by a guy named Jeff Abelli. He's super cool. He started working in Cameroon years ago. He also takes people on chocolate tourism around the world, to Uganda, to Costa Rica. And Jeff is based in Pennsylvania. Look, you guys can reach out to me anytime and ask me if you're traveling about chocolate makers you can go see. Because it's actually kind of a fun thing to do, to go see these chocolate makers. And usually if a town has a chocolate maker, it's a cool town. You know, Rushville has a chocolate maker. It's usually a cool town if they have it. So this is Ghana. Here, Audrey will pass it around. No, they didn't get it. Let me keep breaking it with my glove too. I'll give them some and then I'll pass it to you. Okay, so again, bite it a couple times, then just let it melt. Take a lot of breaths through your mouth, through your nose, because you've got this orthonasal connection that's gonna help you taste. If you wanna try something, plug your nose and see if you can taste anything. Plug your nose and put the chocolate in. You can try it with mint too. So if you put mint in and you plug your nose, you're gonna feel it on your nerve, but you're not gonna taste the mint. So take a lot of breath with that. I'm gonna teach this class again at 4:30. Somebody else got dropped out, so anyway, thanks you guys. Thanks a lot. Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming.